Children are indeed heritage from the only true God. Today in America, we are experiencing this tragic moments repeated over and over and over again, this time in Nashville, Tennessee. Innocent children were murdered, and Christian school attacked, not only Christian schools, but in the past history, even hospitals, malls, churches. Sad reality here in the United States of America. I'm going to share with you this commentary from this newscaster, and let us hear what he has to say about the recent tragedy that happened in America.
People are just responding to incentives. It's rational in a way. But that does not explain the anger that we heard in that NPR segment. Why are some trans people so angry, and why do they seem to be mad specifically at traditional Christians? We can't think of any trans person who's ever been murdered by a pastor. As far as we know, that has never happened. So it's not an actual threat of violence from Christians that's inspiring some trans people to buy AR-15s. No, it's got to be more fundamental than that. And it is. The trans movement is the mirror image of Christianity, and therefore its natural enemy. In Christianity, the price of admission is admitting that you're not God. Christians openly concede that they have no real power over anything, and for that matter, very little personal virtue. They will tell you to your face that they are sinful and helpless and basically absurd. They're not embarrassed about any of this. They brag about it. That saved a wretch like me, goes the most famous Christian hymn ever written in English. The trans movement takes the opposite view. Trans ideology claims dominion over nature itself. We can change the identity we were born with, they will tell you with wild-eyed certainty. Christians can never agree with this statement because these are powers they believe God alone possesses. That unwillingness to agree, that failure to acknowledge a trans person's dominion over nature, incites and enrages some in the trans community. People who believe they're God can't stand to be reminded that they're not. So Christianity and transgender orthodoxy are wholly incompatible theologies. They can never be reconciled. They are on a collision course with each other. One side is likely to draw blood before the other side. That's what we concluded last week. Yesterday morning, tragically, our fears were confirmed. A self-identified trans person called Audrey Hale committed mass murder at a Christian school in Nashville. Hale burst into a place called the convent school and executed 3 9-year-olds as well as 3 adults. Police have released body cam footage from the end of the massacre. We're showing you just a small part of it. You can see the rest online if you want. We're not going to show it because it's too awful and sad. But what was almost as sickening to see in a far more subtle and insidious way was the media coverage of yesterday's tragedy. Here's Terry Moran of ABC News, for example, suggesting that Christians were murdered in Tennessee because they infringed on the rights of transgendered people. Watch.
Audrey Hale identified herself as a transgender person. At state of Tennessee earlier this month passed and the governor signed a bill that banned transgender medical care for minors, as well as a law that prohibited adult entertainment, including male and female impersonators, after a series of drag show controversies in that state.
The state of Tennessee bans the sexual mutilation of children. Children get shot to death in a school. It's cause and effect. That's what ABC News is telling you. That's not far.
The evil of mainstream media is apparent. Although we cannot take sides, but we are just looking at the facts. Indeed, the ideology, the ideas of rebellion against the design and the law of God is apparent in America. And that's why America is going down, not only economically right now, morally as well, and also breaking up of the families, and now murders of innocent children, which has been happening until people are insensitized, and this is what's happening now in America.
From justifying mass murder, but others took the next step. A group called the Trans Resistance Network said that the shooter's death was a complex tragedy that resulted from, quote, anti-trans bias. The Hershey Chocolate Company's new trans spokesman, meanwhile, someone called Faye Johnstone, posted messages after the shooting complaining about, quote, trans misogyny. In Canada, a taxpayer-funded trans rights organization put out a statement that ignored the murder of the children in Nashville entirely and instead claimed there has been a, quote, exponential rise in anti-trans violence. That is a lie. It's a provable lie. And in fact, the opposite is true. We seem to be watching the rise of trans terrorism. The man who tried to murder Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh after the repeal of Roe v. Wade, identified as a, quote, trans gamer girl. The man who shot up a nightclub in Colorado in this past November and murdered 5 people, identified as non-binary. And now this, and there could be more. Antifa has announced this coming Saturday is the, quote, Trans Day of Vengeance. Vengeance for what? That's not explained. But the suggestion is there will be violence in Washington this weekend. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted about this today, because if there's a day of vengeance coming, the rest of us should probably know about it. And for doing so, immediately had her official congressional Twitter account suspended. You're not supposed to talk about any of this, apparently. And the authorities in Nashville certainly are not planning to talk about it. They're doing their best not to. Here's the police chief of Nashville explaining that, well, he's happy to talk about the shooter's guns. He's not going to tell you anything about the shooter's motives. Why?
So in the manifesto, there's several different writings about other locations. There were locations, there was talks about the school. There was a map of the school, a drawing of how potentially she would enter and the assaults that would take place. It's quite a bit of writing to it. I have not read the entire manifesto. Our team and the FBI have been working on this.
Well, that's interesting. Within what seemed like minutes, we saw pictures of the rifles and the pistol. We now have horrifying body cam footage from within the school. So unsettling, we're not going to show it to you. But somehow we can't see the manifesto in which the killer explains why she killed. Why is that? It's not accidental. Well, you know exactly why it is. Because it would make the obvious undeniable. The trans movement is targeting Christians, including with violence. Most Christian leaders in this country don't want to admit that. Admitting it might force them to take deeply unfashionable positions. But it is true, and anyone who's paying attention knows that it's true. And so, like most true things at this point, it is officially suppressed. Here, for example, is Joe Biden yelping again about how it's all your fault when these tragedies happen because you've got guns at home. This is from yesterday.
We have to do more to stop gun violence. It's ripping our communities apart, ripping the soul of this nation, and ripping the very soul of the nation. And we have to do more to protect our schools so they aren't turned into prisons. You know, the shooter in this situation reported we had 2 assault weapons and a pistol, 2 AK-47. So I call on Congress again to pass my assault weapons ban.
So we're going to prevent you from learning why the shooter did it, and we don't have to guess because she wrote a whole manifesto about why she did it. And we know that she did that because she told a friend of hers on Instagram that she did it, but we can't see it. We can only talk about the guns. We can't know what kind of drugs she was taking, what kind of hormones or SSRIs or benzodiazepines. We can only guess. We can only talk about the guns. Pass my assault weapons ban. That'll fix the problem. But Joe Biden is lying about that. He knows that he's lying, and you know that he's lying. Yesterday's massacre did not happen because of lax gun laws. Yesterday's massacre happened because of a deranged and demonic ideology that is infecting this country with the encouragement of people like Joe Biden.
Just imagine what's happening right now, whether you agree with Tucker or not. The demons are on the loose here in the United States. beginning with Columbine and many other high-profile mass shooting. For Christians today, the conclusion is that let us secure our family and commit our lives to the one true God and his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, the one who could save us. If we put our trust in God, we will not fear what demonic man and woman or trans can do to us. They can take away our lives, but not our faith in the one true God and his Son. My heart poured out to those innocent victims and mass murder shootings. Children, I have my own children. Children are very dear to God. And they are being murdered by the enemies of God, including those ideologies of demons who would like to replace God and exalt their unnatural passions and feelings because they want to be gods, to take away life of others. Let us not hate. Let's continue to pray, but do know it will get worse until the final judgment of Christ. The church is impotent right now. Individual, we need to go back to the Word of God and search our own souls and heed the counsel to flee Sodom and Gomorrah. Flee and be free to share your faith to those who are willing to search. It is a sad day for America. The end of security and the end of morality. Satan has let loose his agents. More worst will come. Our only hope is in the one true God and his Son, Jesus Christ. And the Spirit of God and the Spirit of Christ comforting us today. Let us be vigilant, prayerful, aware of our surroundings, and completely trust and obey God. There's nothing to fear. We have God's truth and we have the message. Let's continue to pray for one another and let's continue to fight these demonic forces who are running our government, running the corporations, mass medias in this world. Let us stay true and be safe